Good afternoon and welcome. This is the Marion City Council work session for Tuesday, July 3rd, 2018. Okay, finance.
Yeah, Your Honor, the only one started under my section is number 5, but it deals with setting a public hearing to amend the CIP, but I might refer the projects themselves to maybe Mike and Ryan if they got any comments they'd like to make on the reason for the amendments.
I can. So we presented to the City Council at the work session in regards to the Eco-Industrial Park. Since we've identified the funding mechanisms now, we're going to go ahead and amend the capital improvements program to identify which mechanisms for funding we're going to move forward with.
Any questions on that?
And then for the ones that were deallocated and allocating, so basically the 29th and Indian Creek intersection improvement project had $200,000 allocated to it. We only used about $30,000 for the study, and then council decided to do nothing with the near-term solutions. So that extra money, a portion of that we're allocating towards the 2018 sanitary sewer capacity study, which we presented on to show that immediate need.
Okay. Any questions on that or discussion? Anyone? Anything else on the finance calendar, on the finance section that anyone has questions on? Okay, thank you, Wes. Public service. I guess there's nothing starred there. Any questions on the two items under public service? Okay. On the police, fire.
I'll just give a quick update from the police department perspective. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and tonight, previous Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and tonight, I've had officers out, one officer in a unmarked vehicle and another officer trailing in a marked vehicle. What we would get is we'd get a call for service in regards to fireworks, send basically the undercover car up to try to identify the offender, and then bring in the uniformed officer to issue a citation after. During those proactive assignments, we've answered, 33 calls for service. Of those 33 call for services that we responded to, we were able to issue 6 citations. So that's about 20% ratio of success. We've had 161 call for service into the PD since June 21st, and that's pretty much year to date because there wasn't much before that. But I looked at the calls for service from last year. Pretty consistent from what we had last year. I don't see a dramatic increase in the call for services received.
Okay. Any questions on that? So I think it's important that we have citations being issued because I think that as a deterrent effect will help, for future years.
I almost forgot we did, I think, issue one citation at a vendor tent for some problems with the person that was staying there all night guarding the fireworks. So just an FYI.
Oh, you mean at one of the vendors?
Yeah, so I believe it's in the ordinance that if they're going to store the fireworks in the tent overnight, they have to have somebody stay with it. We found this person to be drinking and asleep. So,
I know we're going to have, Chief, some future discussion about this, what we do about the fireworks. And I think the request I would have is that we look at, what were the number of citations in 2016 before the new state law, last year when we had the really wide period of time where they could shoot them off, and then this year where we have just 1 year. But I'd also be interested in getting some of that information as well from maybe Cedar Rapids and Hiawatha, since their policies this year are quite different than ours. So that we could really see is the fact that we have a lot more fireworks being sold in Marion really has an impact on the number of citations. So in Cedar Rapids, they're not allowing any fireworks, but I'd be really curious to see, if their citations, or at least the number of calls, is significantly different from last year or the year before, kind of what these trends may be, so that we can make sense out of whatever discussion we're going to have.
Not a problem at all. What I'll do is I already
I'm just
have.
looking at total numbers.
Sure. I have the historical data day to day. Last year, we can go to historical data from 2016, and I can put out an email to Sheriff Gardner and Chief German in regards to the other data. That's not a problem at all.
Great, thanks.
What does the citation consist of? So they get it, and what does that mean? Is it a
It's like a
fee?
traffic ticket.
So it's a pay the fee and you're done? And how much is the fee?
Deb, can you help me out with the fine, or Nikki, can you help me out with the fine?
Chief, it's actually an arrestable offense. It's a non-scheduled violation, so there's not a set fee on it. There's a court date that's issued to them in the future. So we normally.
Excuse me, would you mind coming here to the microphone, because the meeting is recorded, so we.
Nikki's one of the officers. I think you were actually doing some of the work, or is that tonight or tomorrow night?
I did it on Sunday and tonight, too.
Okay.
Would you just repeat what you said so that we can have that on the recording?
The citation itself is actually what's considered an arrestable offense because there's not a fee associated with it. So there's a court date that's set, and it's normally done 2 weeks out. That person that's cited has to go and talk to a judge about it, and then the judge determines whether or not it's going to be the small fine, which is normally court costs or $65, but that's all at the county attorney's level at that point. When we issue it, we consider it an arrest here in Marion, and I think that's statewide because it's not considered like a traffic ticket anymore where a fine is issued.
So that goes on their record.
I believe so.
And then the judge determines a fee, so there's a chance that there's no fee, perhaps.
That is correct. They could issue just the court costs that's associated with it, or they can issue a small fine anywhere up to, I think it's up to a year for a simple misdemeanor, I think is what it's considered now.
Okay. And since you're here and you've been doing this, how have people responded? Do they act like they don't know? Do they not really care? Are they hostile, or do you get everything?
Most people that we've encountered here in Marion that we've issued citations to have been really pleasant, but that goes a lot with the way that we treat them as well. If we're going to issue a citation, we're not going to be chewing anybody out for doing it. A lot of people have said that they weren't aware of the change, which then we refer them back to all of the Facebook posts from the City Council's Facebook posts to our Facebook to the Fire Department's Facebook. I think the Gazette, KCRG, they've all posted the change in that law as well. So there's really no excuse for people not to see this. And then vendors as well are supposed to be handing out or have signs that say when you can actually shoot them off. Because I talked to a vendor that we cited on her own personal property and said, well, yeah, we know about it because we're supposed to be telling people about it.
But we don't require them to post something, like when the fire marshal does the inspection, that's not something we can enforce or make them have, or do we?
Yes, we're actually handing out small cards that say when they can shoot them off, which is July 4th only. So, yes, all the vendors are aware they're supposed to be giving those with each purchase, so.
And I know you guys had mentioned something about Cedar Rapids as well for statistics. Last year and previous years in the past, they don't enter calls for service. This is the first year that they have entered calls for service. So prior to 2018, there probably will not be statistics from Cedar Rapids because they just put them out on their little talk screens as attempts to locates. So if an officer in that area happens to see it, then they would handle it at that point. So there may be calls for service if they cite, but as for like us, we enter every single call for service. If we get a complaint, Cedar Rapids just started doing that this year.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks for all that information.
And we're not bonding anybody, or we're cite and releasing at the scene, just so you guys know.
Correct.
That's why it's kind of like a traffic ticket. They're not being processed and put in handcuffs in the back of the squad, none of that. So that's why I kind of said traffic ticket and
Yes, Chief, that is correct. We're not taking them to jail on this.
All right.
and I think it's up to Ryan's text me. I think it's up to 30 days on that they could be, put away.
But it's more. There's more involved than simply paying a fine. They have to
It's a court appearance, yeah.
go to the court appearance. I mean, it is. Yeah, good.
So just real quick, so what if they get a second one? Is it just a second citation, or is it something escalated?
I guess we haven't dealt with that yet.
Okay.
We would treat it the same as we do the first. It's still, there's no like enhancement
Okay.
on the citation itself. But then once it gets to the county attorney, they'll be like, oh, well, you've already been cited and, we kind of just slapped you on the wrist here, but now you've gotten a second one and you know better. So it would be at their level at that point as well. We're still going to do the same thing, cite them, release them on the same ordinance.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Nikki.
Yeah, Councilman Jensen and I were just talking that, maybe that should be publicized somehow, the potential consequences. Because I think, we've publicized, what the law is as far as when you can legally use them, but what the potential consequences are, I don't know if that's been in the Gazette or been anywhere. And I
On
think
the card that you hand, that's
It is?
being hand, no, I'm saying that'd
On
be
the
good on
card?
the card.
Yep, we could do that.
I mean, the fact that
No,
you
we
gotta make a
haven't.
court appearance, I know I've read something about there could be some larger fines,
Yeah.
but I don't think anybody understands this is a lot more serious than it was a year ago, and that you have to appear in court. I mean, I don't think, this is the first time I'm hearing about it. and I-
It's not more serious. It's the same.
it
it's the
hasn't
same.
changed, it's just
It
that,
hasn't changed.
yeah.
Okay.
Would it be possible, or who would determine if we wanted to, instead of relying on the vendors to hand out the cards, which
I
just
know.
seems wrong, it's like putting a 5-year-old in charge of the cookie jar, could we require a posting of a large-sized poster of the same information that we would include in the inspection, or is that a state or regulation that we have to adhere to?
It's kind of a state
Okay.
thing, but at the same time, we could require it, but I don't know if we can enforce to make them do it either. The notices were kind of, the state told them that each city needed to notify of when they could shoot off, so, but I guess we could do a poster. I just wanted to say that we have received no complaints at the fire department this year compared to almost 100 calls last year. We've received no complaints about them going off. Our fire marshal, though, has put in over 100 hours just
Because of the
inspecting
tents
and making sure that
Yeah.
they're remaining safe. So that's
And-
been pretty tough.
I don't know if any other council members have received, I have not received any emails
No,
or phone calls.
nothing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Much better.
Okay, anything to add to that discussion? Well, thank you to everyone who's involved with implementing this and making sure that everybody's safe. Thank you. Okay, on to number 3.
With item number 2, also, I just wanted to add, with that memorandum of understanding, of course, I need to put out an RFQ for that, for the developer, and was just wondering about, at one time, the council seemed to confirm that a reverse referendum was which way you wanted to go to fund that. Is that still the council's purview or choice?
Lon, do you
I should
want to
say.
run through that again? Because we have new people who may not understand
No,
that.
we talked
Oh, you
about
do?
that.
Okay.
Yeah, we talked
Okay.
about that a month and a half ago.
Yep.
Turn on your.
Yeah, we talked about that a month ago.
Yeah, Beth
I think
couldn't
that was
find
the
it in the
consensus
minutes,
at that
so.
time, wasn't it?
Okay.
We
Okay.
just wanted to confirm it because it shapes the RFQ when you
Yes.
put it out, whether you're going to be expecting them to help you with the run-up to a bond vote or whether or not you're going to be doing it through reverse referendum.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
And just to add, if the council does want to go with bond vote, we do have a deadline approaching in order to get it on the ballot, so that has to be a consideration as well, which would be at the end of August.
Yeah, I think I was the only one who was in favor of a bond vote. I don't know
Yes.
that we took an official vote, but unless anybody's changed, I'll just concede. I'm outnumbered.
Okay, thank you, thank you. As for number 3, this was at last minute. I heard from Area Ambulance. We just need to update their contract. I think a copy of that was put in front of each of you. It's just the same as we've had for the last 9 years, 10 years. So nothing's really changed. We just needed, every 3 years, we update that and re-sign. Any questions on that?
Any questions for the chief on that one? Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thank you. see there's nothing on parks. Under engineering, I guess number 3.
All right, for number 3, if you recall, we bid this project back in February, and it came in at 61.7% of the engineer's estimate. This was a lot of backyards, and so we thought it would be a higher price because it was harder to access. So we've approached the contractor and asked them to do additional locations at the unit prices, and so that's what the change order is. It's adding 4 new locations for a total of $43,450. And so this is still within our budget, and they've actually started work yet this week on other locations.
Okay, questions on that? It's good that we're able to do more than we expected. Yeah.
Yep.
All right, number 5.
For item number 5, so previously we talked about it in the finance section of taking that money from the Indian Creek and 29th Avenue intersection study and using that extra money to go towards HDR's contract. So we had 4 consultants that submitted proposals, and HDR had the best qualifications for that. They're actually currently doing the same thing for portions of Cedar Rapids, and they're also doing a storm sewer study for Cedar Rapids. So we felt they had the right qualifications for this. So we're approving a contract not to exceed $91,500.
Okay, questions?
Just out of curiosity, excuse me, it looked like that was going to take a little over a year for the study. Is that pretty common for this type of study?
So what they're going to do is the first part they're going to do is just based on land use. And so they're just going to look at, okay, this is a residential home, this is a commercial property, and use the DNR rates to figure out what we did in a week, but kind of look at it more closely. And they'll actually give us a map then and say these are where the issues are. And then what they're going to do in the spring is typically your wet season. They're actually going to put meters in our sanitary sewer system. But it's hard to do that during the dry season to figure out what your peaking value actually is. So we just assumed a peaking value of 4. Typically for newer stuff, you can use 4. Stuff that was installed in the 60s, it might actually be a peaking factor of 10 because there's more infiltration, there's more roof drains, there's more sump pumps that are tied into it. And we don't know what that peaking factor is until we actually do wet weather flow. And that's either done in the spring or the fall, but the spring gives you better numbers because of the ice melt and everything.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay. Everyone,
So we'll basically have 2 reports. We'll have a preliminary one, and based on that one, there might be moratoriums, or we might say, okay, no more development in this area until we do further study or something, and then get the final report put out.
is that likely that we'll have to have moratoriums?
I'm going to guess so.
Yeah.
And that's something where, as a council, you guys are going to have to decide how far do we want to sewer, because we can sewer Albernette, but do we really want to? How far do we want to grow?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
All right, number 6, this is the TAC report. We had the citizen presentation that came in and talked about the streetlights. Since the time that I wrote you the memo, I did send you an email that had some updated prices in it. So the East View and 10th Street, the Bruce Road 10th Street, the Williams Drive and 10th Street will all be installed at no installation cost. There is a yearly maintenance cost that we pay for all our lights that are out there on wood poles. Right now, I got from the finance department, we pay about $21,000 per month citywide. So it's not a very high cost that we pay per light. The bigger cost was for the Rolling Glen Drive and the 10th Street. To install that one light was going to be $5,691.03. Talking with finance, Leanne with finance, she believed that could come out of the road use funds if that's still a light that you guys would like to install. City policy provides that we do that as part of our policy to have them at the intersections. Police and fire like it so they know when they're in a hurry that there's a street there that they can turn on. So that's typically, like if it was a brand new subdivision, we would make the developer put that in as part of their improvement cost. So I don't know if tax response has changed at all from police or fire's perspective. So we would recommend moving forward with that coming out of road use funds. And so there's actually separate resolutions for each one. So if you wanted to vote them all down with the last one, or if you want to vote them for them all, they're all individual.
Did you say you sent out an email on the?
Yeah, it was today.
Somehow I missed that.
Oh, it's today?
It was today.
I haven't seen it.
I'm a little behind on my emails.
Is there a way to make the street light on 10th and Connection more efficient, brighter? It's really a dark, you got a lot of kids going to Lao.
We can certainly look at that. I don't know if it's an LED or an APS light.
Wait a minute. Now tell me.
We can look at that and see. We might be able to change it to an LED or up the watts to it. But
It's
we can
pretty
look into
dark,
it.
you know. Particularly with all the stuff going on at Lao right now, you have a lot of people walking across there.
Okay, so that's items
So
6.
the staff
through-
is recommending approval of all of them?
Yep.
Yep, okay. Sorry, go on.
And they're, like I said, they're, for the installation costs, the first 3, there is no cost. It's just the last one that there is a cost for installation, just because they actually have to bore a line in and put the pole in, versus the other ones, what they're going to do is they're going to put it on a wood pole that's already there and just run the power down to it. So that's why they're not charging us installation for those. And in your council packet, there was the letter from Betty supporting the lights.
Correct. Okay.
All right, item 11. So I know a lot of time we give our legislatures in Des Moines a hard time for all these regulations that they put down on us, but every once in a while they do make it easier on us. So the mayor and Renee actually voted at the MPO policy board to approve the swap program. So what that is basically the MPO gets about $5.5 million every year, and that gets distributed basically among us Lynn County communities. So between those, we make applications, and then they allocate that money out. Normally, like if you saw my picture I had for 7th and 7th, that comes with a lot of strings attached to it. What they've done is they've taken a lot of those strings away so that we can streamline those projects. So a big thing is NEPA. Before you even start preliminary plans or right-of-way acquisitions, you have to have full NEPA clearance before you can even start on that. Now they can be concurrent. So similar to a city project where we can start talking to property owners of, hey, what do you think about this road coming in? We can't do that until we have NEPA clearance. So as you can see previously, under just federal dollars, we were going to having a letting in the winter of 2020 with construction of spring of 2021. And this was the portion of Tower Terrace from C to Albernet. Now by going with swap funds, which basically means the federal dollars we're letting the state keep so that they can go through the hoops. They're used to going through those hoops. And they're switching out dollar for dollar, and they're giving us the state funds that have less hoops. And so because of that, the letting can be winter of 2019, construction spring of 2020, and property acquisitions are going to start this year. So we're saving a year, and we're starting the process now rather than waiting till NEPA's completely done. So now Tower Terrace is going to move forward a little quicker. So just wanted to give an update on this. This project, the main lead on it is Cedar Rapids, but it's Cedar Rapids, Lynn County, and us are all part of this project, C to Albernet, because there's a portion of it that's not annexed into either city yet. So they're a part of it. But just wanted to give you guys an update that we are working through the swap funding, and Tower Terrace is going to move forward.
So that will be completed 2020.
The letting will be in, or the construction will start in 2020 is the plan.
Okay.
So we'll break ground in 2020.
Okay. Okay.
But that's a year sooner than we were going to.
Well, that's an important connection for Marion.
Yes.
To C Avenue. So, okay. We're good. Any questions on that? Okay, before we move on, Councilwoman Gadela wanted to go back to number 3.
Yeah, sorry, real quick, Mike, you said something that I just want to get clear on. You said we need to decide as a city how far out we want a sewer. So what would that, when would we do something like that? When would we have that discussion? Because if we don't plan for it or no, then we're gonna start just doing things in isolation and not
Sure.
looking holistically. So when's that appropriate?
So the first thing we're going to do is look at our current capacity. So originally, if you remember the presentation I gave, basically County Home Road and the highway were kind of the boundaries that was established back in the day. So we're going to start by just seeing, can we sewer that and what do we have to improve that? And then we'll have to come to you and say, just to make those improvements, I believe it was $7 or $8 million of improvements just to serve that area. Then it's a matter of how far larger do we want to grow. So there's actually already a moratorium on Berry's Run because the sanitary sewer that goes through Hunter's Ridge is not big enough. And so some of that is going to have to, we'll have to sit down and we're just going to have to discuss it of how far do we want to go. Do we want to serve sanitary sewer all the way to Alburnett Road or all the way to the city of Alburnett? Do we want to serve them? Is that something that is really, so we're just going to have to kind of look at it. So when we did it in the past, what we did is we looked at past growth rates and said, okay, in 2020 at the time, I think in Whitlow's memo, we were going to be at 33,000 in 2020. We're already closer to 40. So we're just going to have to do some projections on how fast do we want to grow. And this is something that may slow development if we don't have the money. We got to fix the issues we have first and then see where we can grow. So we got to fix one problem at a time. But yeah, there will be plenty of discussion on how far do we want to grow.
But will that be at like a CIP? Would that be at a strategic plan? Will it be at a regular meeting when the one comes back that takes us to County Home for Prospect Meadows?
It'll be multiple. Ultimately, we can't, when we do the CIP and we figure out what those actual costs are going to be, that's when we'll kind of start the discussion. Because we have to have that money allocated. But if we already have $7 to $9 million just to fix what we have, it's kind of hard to look too much far forward before we get that fixed first.
Okay, that's fair. I just don't want to miss it. Thanks.
Well, I know this is going to be, I agree with Renee. I mean, this is going to be a very critical area so that as a city, we know how far we want to go and what we can support financially, but also developers need to know how far out we're going to go. And if they buy land outside of that region, that is not going to be supported until years down the road. So.
And that's why it'll help when we have this plan to say, okay, today we can develop 200 more acres and then we're done.
Yeah.
And so having that report and telling us where we're at today will help us guide so we can move forward with it.
Very important.
Okay. Anything else on that one? Anything else that wasn't discussed on the engineering section? Okay, on to community development, and boy, this one I'm turning the gavel over.
The first items I have starred are related to public hearings for the Bluebird Apartment project located out on Highway 13 and 100. Whoops. Subject property is highlighted in red there on the northeast corner of the development. You get the hotel, Quick Trip, DePaco, all shown there. The developer, Darrell High, or the applicant, Darrell High, he is seeking approval of the 6 apartments, 12 units each, 72 units total, on about just over 4 acres of land. The applicant is hoping to begin construction this year, late this year, pending approval of the project by City Council. High development there. They've been in Marion, Cedar Rapids area for quite some time and manage over 1,100 units. I think we're all familiar with the property, how we've had it designed with as part of the design standards, as part of the whole manual that was adopted by the council last year at the developer's request to give us some direction on how the property would develop. And with the initial concept that was shown, again, that area highlighted in red was really 2 large residential buildings and 1 commercial, parking kind of interior. Again, this is very conceptual. We've deviated quite a bit from the plan already a little bit, not just in terms of design, but in terms of just how where things are actually going to be at. The bank and the Quick Trip are the only two that have really been consistent. The hotel has shifted some. So it's kind of a document that is evolving as projects come forward. So I mean, I don't want you to get hung up on just exactly where buildings are shown, but it's conceptually, is this what we're planning for? So again, there's obviously some deviation. This is all in the report if you gotta look at the report. There's obviously some deviation from what was proposed. He's proposing multiple additional buildings, smaller buildings, 72 units, as I said, with garages around the exterior of the site. You can see the hotel that was just approved a couple months ago. So this is the biggest deviation, losing the commercial along Carlson Avenue and then having an interior street with garages. Again, the original concept showed some parking interior, likely drive-under garages. I don't want to call them underground garages, but first-floor garages to help give the density. When you don't provide shared parking like that within the buildings, obviously you got to eat up parking or land with surface parking or garages. So it takes a little bit more land to accommodate the parking. So I think the changes from what was conceptually approved versus what's being proposed are pretty obvious. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. This will all be private. Well, everything's private anyways, but this is privately owned and maintained as part of the high development's responsibility when they manage it. There's no other access to any other parts of the site. Site details, this is a slightly older one than what's current. He has a pretty significant landscape berm along this west side, landscape berm along the south side. Then he's maintaining as much of the existing landscaping on the north side that exists today, which is actually pretty thick. And then he's filling in some gaps in this location just to complete the landscaping around the site. The bigger issues I think have come out of the Planning and Zoning Commission has just been the design part of it, and that's something I brought up numerous times with every project. These copied pretty dark. I have to apologize. This is the planned. This is just the general look of the buildings. So 12 of these will basically look generally the same. Mix of materials. I'll go into the material list in a little bit. Very contemporary though. Flat roof, clean lines, emphasis on the entrances. I mean, these are contemporary building styles that the project has been looking for. So the overall, the design itself does meet the design standards, staff believes. When he was at council, they approved it, recommended approval. I think it was 6-1 or 5-1. There was one dissenting vote on it. The one condition they did place was on the Carlson Way facing buildings. So building frontages in this area was a condition that they wanted to see a little bit more emphasis put on those, a little more variation of materials or a little more design considerations from what they initially submitted. And this is the resubmittal. The initial plan concepts that the commission asked to be changed. Okay. This is a lot brighter, so it shows a little nicer. This is the original concept. You had a panel system as opposed to the cement board siding that was being shown in the metal siding, the architectural steel sidings. So you had metal panel system, and the commission wanted to see a little bit more on that public side of Carlson Way. So as resubmitted, put those on one. They came back and they got rid of the metal or the panel system. They've gone with a cement board product. Again, they've got horizontal architectural steel in areas, and then they've got the vertical. So you're getting material going both ways to offer a little bit of difference. They've come in with a textured block on portions of it, and those are the obvious changes to that side. That's where they came from P&Z to City Council with the materials. And then the materials do go around the building. I think all the elevations show it. Again, they're pretty dark, so I can get you a cleaner copy by Thursday if you'd like, a little brighter copy. But so they've wrapped that same similar materials around the entire building with the vertical and horizontal metal siding and the cement board as well. So they've deviated quite a bit, kind of from the original plan at P&Z, based on the comments from the commission that they gave, and then so that's your resubmittal. Again, the packet shows the rest of the elevations. Front elevation, I guess, again, kind of dark to see. But these are all screened-in porches. So the dark, there's a lot of shadowing going on here too. So you got the indoor or the screen porches. This is that fly wall, I guess I'm going to call it, that sticks out. Main entrance right there. And again, you can see the cement board or the cement board and the stone blocks being wrapped around the building. Again, the big question, I guess, for the council to decide is, these are materials that aren't prohibited in the document, and based on the quick start discussions, just because it's prohibited doesn't mean, or just because it's not listed as a permitted material doesn't necessarily mean it's prohibited. So there's some siding in here that's not specifically prohibited. That's the question, I guess, for you guys to tackle. The other big major question is, this is a deviation from the plan. You went from a much higher density product to, I don't even want to call this low density, but this is a lower density product. It's about 17 units per acre. The original plan was higher than 17 units per acre, but 17 units per acre is still a dense product, but farther from what was approved. And you're losing that commercial component along Carlson Way. So that's the big changes. Again, Commission did recommend approval, kind of subject to some changes happening that I showed you on the Carlson Way side. But again, they deviated some from, P&Z with some substituting some of the materials. So I'm bringing a recommendation of approval from the Commission.
For Dave?
Yeah, I have a question.
Oh.
On the old map, there was an event space with a hotel. Has that disappeared now?
No, the event space is still shown, but it's not, I wouldn't say it's, they're just showing that space. There's the overall site. The event space you're pointing out is right here. It's shown as commercial.
Well,
it could be event space. It could be a restaurant. It's still flexible.
Well, I'm thinking of a place where Marion can have the state of the city address in Marion.
No, not yet.
But you think that commercial building there then, because on the old map it showed it.
It showed it. Yeah,
behind the
they've
hotel.
talked about an event space, but whether that actually happens or not, that's
Okay.
I'm sure they'd love to do one, but if a restaurant comes and wants to buy the ground, I'm sure they'll sell it too. So.
Yeah, a couple of comments. First of all, I think from the standpoint of meeting the overall objective of a contemporary look and feel, I certainly think it meets that. The difference in some of the siding uses doesn't bother me as much as probably the density change. Again, the developer's agreement said the developer agrees to require each purchaser of the subdivided lots to complete the applicable portion of the development projects in accordance with the PDS. And I think that major deviation is what concerns me the most, especially from the standpoint that the city is putting a lot of money into this project to support it, and the rental rate of these units is not going to really benefit the housing study that we have put into place that we got a year and a half ago. So there's no benefit to that. In fact, it probably makes that situation worse. So if there was some benefit along those lines, I'd be leaning towards it, but at this point, I'm leaning away from it because of those reasons.
Kim?
Oh, yeah, I had a question about the housing study, too. How does this fit into our housing study? Is this something we need?
I'll defer to Lon on the housing study questions.
Yeah, the housing analysis that we had done community-wide really focused in on a couple of different areas and noted that we had a need in two specific sectors of our market. We had a need for higher-end units. There was a shortage there. And then we also had a shortage of what would be at the affordable end of the spectrum. And they defined those according to the maximum amount that people could afford, according to median income levels across the city. At this point, this price point, they identified we had a surplus of almost 1,000 units. But more than that, the dynamic that it creates in the housing market is that the shortage at the top end means that the people with the highest incomes go to the next tier down, which I would characterize this one as being that next tier down And that in turn forces the ones who could afford this into the next tier down, all the way down to the bottom, to the point where you're pushing folks out that have no other housing options. So that's kind of the cascade effect that it has. That was the conclusion that was drawn from the study. That was why we we initially did the study to make sure that Marion could qualify community-wide for projects that would qualify for the state's workforce housing program.
So just to reiterate and confirm for myself, this does less for what we need. The original would have done more. Is that right?
Yeah, the type of housing that they were showing on the original one, the only way you can really make those work is you do have to be towards the premium market to support the density and support the amenity levels. We have one project, Bison Ridge, Sunny Ridge, that's under construction right now over off of Bison Court that gets into that market. But so far, that's been the only project that's been brought forward hitting that top end of the market for our area.
And what's our highest density? What this was originally proposed, where do we have something like that already in Marion?
I think Chapel Ridge would probably be one of the densest. Well, Chapel Ridge or even these newer apartments on 10th Street are pretty dense. Pelly's project is, I'd say, fairly dense as well, which is just north of here, quarter mile, half mile, whatever it is. So Chapel Ridge is probably the most dense one we have, though.
Kim, did you have any other questions? How about left? Well,
Yeah, I'm curious. So what is the difference in the density, and then also what is the difference in the actual square footage of the lot? Because it looks it looks like it's much larger.
Yeah, the initial concept, it didn't have a density. It didn't give a density. It didn't illustrate density. So I guess we're making assumptions that it is dense, but I think it is just because of the cost of the land and cost to develop. I think they had to make it dense to make it work. So with this original concept, there's no density assigned to it.
Okay.
I mean, I'm just looking at the renderings they kind of provided. We're just assuming it was a multi-story project, had some underground parking. So I'm making some assumptions that it was a very dense product. We're about 17 units per acre on what's proposed. The lot is bigger because you're accommodating
Garages.
More surface parking and the garages without the ground floor parking, I guess you call it. So you have to make it bigger to accommodate that.
so what did that erode into? The event space? Did it go west? Like the footprint?
This road here. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Took a road out.
The new boundaries of the plat are shown in that red dashed line there.
Right.
So it got significantly larger. About 3 or 4 months ago, the council approved a revision of the preliminary plat that eliminated this north-south street there, just based on how the hotels were shifting and how some of the other projects were shifting. So it allowed this piece to get significantly larger.
Well,
What about parking?
It actually parks itself, and I think there's a few extra spaces too. So and I'm sure the applicant will be here on Thursday, and he'll tell you this as well. But he's indicated that you rent a unit, you get the garage. It's not optional, so you don't have I'm sure we all remember having to pay an extra $20, $25 for the garage every month. This comes with the unit, so you're kind of forcing people into the garages. You're not letting people not do it and cause a parking problem.
Until they start using the garage as storage and not for a car.
Well, they could still use it for storage, but but yeah, that's one advantage that I think by forcing the garage on the tenant with the lease, it helps. It basically requires them to use it and not ignore it and then go park someplace else on the property. So it parks itself, and that's what it has a little bit of excess. That's what I'm looking for.
Now, so from the original concept, you're losing commercial.
Correct.
With the size of this apartment complex being larger than originally thought, is there more commercial being lost? I mean, do you have an idea of how much commercial space is being lost?
No, they didn't
accommodate this?
Yeah, they didn't indicate any square footage of buildings on the site on the conceptual plan. It was just like there could be a commercial building here. It could be 1 story, 2 stories, 3.
Sure.
It was very conceptual. It was reserving space for the potential of commercial.
What's the city's investment in this?
It's through the TIF and
Yeah, we have a development agreement with the overall developer for the site that provides for a series of tax rebates on each phase of the project that's completed for 12 years, up to a maximum total of about $9.6 million.
Okay.
And this is phase.
I believe this is actually takes up the property that was anticipated to be phase 5 or 6. It was one of the later ones that was originally projected.
And there was a more accurate site. I was using an older site plan. That's probably not fair to use that one. There was a. There we go. I have to make it into my final copy here. I got staff reports all mixed up here. There we go. I should give a fair site plan of the entire site. There we go. Yeah, this is the site plan that we should be looking at too. This is in the earlier ones, the garages are further forward. He's created space there instead of buildings. Pushed the garages further off Carlson Way here. Again, north is toward the top of the page. He's pushed everything off Carlson Way a little bit further. You can see the treed berm providing on the sides behind the garages. And this is that berm. This is the hotel over here. So he's illustrating the berm here. So the garage is actually recessed into the ground a little bit. So you're not really going to see. So you'll have landscaping taller than the roof line of the garage. So much better screening.
Where are the dumpsters?
Dumpsters are there and there. And again, I think Daryl, when he's here on Thursday, he can tell you that they do frequent pickups. They don't do once a week. I don't think they do a pretty good job of managing their sites. So.
What about this is for any age, so there's no little playground or anything. Has that been contemplated or discussed?
We haven't honestly haven't even discussed it.
Okay. So what's the fencing look like? Said that they proposed fencing between garage buildings.
Yep, and again, Daryl can confirm. He's going to be doing we'll start down here on the south side. He'll be doing a kind of a wrought iron or faux wrought iron fencing with some pillars. If you're familiar with North Marion, he did the Huntington. He did a project off Winslow Road. He did some faux wrought iron fencing with some pillars, and then he'll do the black chain link between the garages. Biggest concern is just cut through traffic north to south, south to north, through the homes to the north, and he wants to control that and who's coming and going from the development. Wants to keep them at those controlled points, so it's not prevents people from using their dumpsters, and it just creates a safer site.
So like Steve, I have an issue with the density change, and I have an issue with the vinyl siding. I get that it's not listed per se, and I know with Quick Star, but I just don't think this is awesome looking for this A, investment we have, and B, location that it's in. And the garages on the outside, I drove by the two properties. I emailed Dave and asked him, where do we have something that has the garages on the outside? So he pointed me to Armar Drive and Magnolia. And the berm is certainly helpful. And if the trees are healthy, I just hate to be on an approval side of putting something in that I just don't think is great from the start when it's never going to look better. I would want to see more, a different use, or at least to cut into some of that vinyl so that it's not so much. And the housing stock, I don't think it really offers anything new or different based on what our needs are. So.
And I should have pointed out too that, again, this is a commission recommendation. They had not seen the revisions, so the council has three options, I guess, or it's more than three. You have approve as is, deny, or you could send it back to the commission if you feel like you want to have them have a crack at the revisions. When they made their recommendation, they said do something. We'll trust staff to move it forward, but the option is you could always kick it back and have them re-review the material list if you want. That's a council's decision on that, but those are really the three options
And
on
that was
Thursday.
a split vote?
It was either 6-1 or
5-1.
5-1, I don't
6-1,
recall.
6-1, I think. Can you, again, one of my major comments is about the density. Is there a way for us to figure out from the original plan compared to this one, with the higher density that was talked about before in the original PDS, on what the range of rents would be with that higher density compared to what we're talking about with
I'd have
this?
to let-
I
I'd
mean,
have to let the
can that
developer-
be,
I'd have to let the developer, I mean, Daryl's been doing this for 30-some years, I think. I mean, I'd like to let him address, what it takes to get to that rent rate, and
Okay.
I'm certainly not qualified to do that, so.
I'm just trying to figure out the ramifications. I mean, the city has put in a lot of money in here, so to me, you talked about that we've deviated in the past. I consider those minor deviations compared to everything we're looking at here. I consider this much more of a major deviation in a couple of areas than we've talked about in past projects.
Well, and I think the other consideration is we gave up a road and more footprint for garages in terms of what we're going to get back out of the value of this corner gateway into the city. We're going to have,
Less density, less investment.
right.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else? Anyone?
Well, this is a public hearing on Thursday for the preliminary site development plan and the final, so there's 2 items on Thursday night.
Okay. Thanks, Dave.
Yep.
Relinquishing the gavel back to the mayor.
The discussion on accessory next?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't bring my list over. Several months ago, I think back in December, we had Mr. Anderson built a garage, and that brought quite a few folks to the council concerned about garages. This comes up every once in a while. I don't think it's ever gotten to council before, but we have big garages built all over town on their own lots, and they are very big garages. From everything from car collections to woodworking. So normally not too big of a deal for the first user. We usually run into problems with the large garages. Second or third owner, first guy keeps a lot of cars in it. The second guy turns it into a workshop. The third guy runs his contractor's business out of it. That's just how they evolve when you build a big garage. I think this is the folks' the folks came in with a lot of worries. Council directed us to start looking at some options for accessory garages. This is similar to what I took a stab at about 10 years ago, and the council decided not to take any action on it once it got here. I think there's a lot of folks that showed up and stood right here and expressed their concerns about it, so it died. So I want to say I'm recycling a little bit from 10 years ago, but I've tried to bring up some exceptions to try to make it a little easier for people to swallow, I guess. I'm just going to start right at the top here and just kind of go over them and kind of explain what each one means. We'll start with item C, the size of structure. Basically, this allows everybody up to a 900 square foot garage on their property. That's a 30 by 30. That's a comfortable 2-stall with plenty of room for the toys, mowers, and everything else. Or a motorcycle parked in there, or even a boat parked in there kind of sideways. So a 900 square foot garage is a pretty good size. That can even get into a 3-stall if you're not parking them deep. You want to park them wide. So it's a good sized garage, and that allows you that as long as you have the room on your lot to meet the setbacks and all the other requirements, you can have up to a 900 square foot garage, or that's the max. As long as you meet the setbacks. And then we have the A1, which is item A. That basically A1 is our agricultural district. Its most common use is still farmland, et cetera, but we have some old farmhouses and some old remnant pieces of property out there that are 1 acre or larger, and most of the time they're the old farmhouse, just how it is. They kept 10 acres for themselves and sold the rest to a developer. That would allow up to 200 square foot of the floor area of the house. So it's the bigger the house you get, the bigger garage you get. If you have a small little old farmhouse, 200 square feet is still pretty big, but it would allow you more than you would in a traditional development. So again, tying it to something that we can easily measure is house size. Go to the assessor site, you're this big, it's easy to calculate how big a garage you can get. Now, within a good code, we've created a ton of exceptions for those guys that have the large lots, 10 acres, 9 acres, whatever they have. Again, the code assumes that, hey, the more lot you have, the bigger house you can have, the more garage you can have, or whatever you want. So that creates some exceptions. So you can exceed the 900 or the 200% if you have, meet items 1, 2, and 3. And they try to put a little bit more of a scale to it. You can have the big garage as long as you do not exceed the height of the primary structure. So if you have a 2-story house, you could get away with a taller garage. That the accessory structure shall be consisted of materials similar in type and color to the primary house. Color was a big issue, is what I've heard in the past. We have some garages out there, though, that, I mean, they match. Got the windows, got the shutters, they got the brick course. They do a really good job of matching the house. We got others that stand out a little bit more. And item 3, that you limit the number of doors facing the public right away. Garage doors. Tom and I've always said we don't want to look at garage doors, and this is just kind of apply. You get 3 garage doors. It could be 3 double doors. It could be 3 single doors. But once you get into the garage, obviously you could have doors facing elsewhere. So to give you some examples, and I'm picking on Jim because he was the last one to get beat up on this issue, but based on these exceptions, Jim has about a 1,400 square foot home, and he would be allowed about 2,800 square foot garage. With the exceptions, I'm sorry, that was the wrong example. He has a 1,900 square foot home, so he would get just under a 4,000 square foot garage by what this code would allow. His garage is actually bigger than that, so he couldn't do it. He didn't meet any of the design standards, so obviously he'd have to cap his garage by several hundred feet. But the code still allows a very big garage to be built if you have multiple acres on your property.
Did I hear you right? A 1,900 square foot house, and his garage can be more than twice the size of the house, 4,000 square feet?
Yeah, he has he has a 1,923 square foot home. He would get a 3,800 and change square foot garage.
So yes, your garage can be twice the size of your house?
Correct.
Okay.
Now his garage is over 4,000 square feet, so he could not build it as is unless he wanted to go and meet all the exceptions. The height, he's got the doubles. He's got a ranch house. He's got a higher garage. He's got more than 3 garage doors, and then the color, obviously. Color's pretty close to matching his house, actually. It's not close. It's a different material. It's close on the color, but different material. So he could not build that garage as is. He'd have to make it a little smaller.
It's a lot higher, too.
It's a lot higher. Now, the problem with restricting the height, though, is I know every couple of years the council likes to take a stab at RVs. If we reduce the height of garages, you're going to have RVs out front or on the property. So that's the problem with that condition. But
Can we tax garages? Like, why not live in your garage if you can build it twice the size of your house?
sure, there's some guys out there I'm sure do. So again, this is my first. I should say this is my first swing at this, but this is recycled from 10 years ago. Created some exceptions for the larger lots because the original one was capping. I think it was 900 square feet, regardless of how big a property you have. And again, that's clearly. I won't say it's not fair for somebody that goes out and buys 10 acres. I mean, they should be entitled to a bigger house or bigger garage. So.
And they don't have neighbors right
Yeah,
there either.
well, that's the issue. But this does not. This leaves it right at zoning. So if you're A1, you get the exceptions, or you get the bigger size.
Mhm.
And if you want to really design it nice, you really can go as big as you want, as long as you meet all the design criteria.
What was all the pushback you had 10 years ago when you said a lot of people came?
The folks showed up and says, "This is my property. I pay taxes. You can't regulate this." And the council at that time said, "You're right. We can't." And you can.
But we regulate fences.
You regulate everything,
Right,
but you didn't.
okay.
You had a room full of people here that didn't want you to regulate it.
Gotcha.
Not you folks, but previous council, and they decided it wasn't something they wanted to tackle right then. It was not like the RV. There was a lot of passion to do something, and then you fill up a room with 100 people, the passion quickly changes.
Even though we can be twice as large as the primary residence, we cannot occupy more than 40% of the rear yard.
Yeah,
right?
and that's.
I mean, that's part of the original.
I want to draw that out because that's
Yeah, that'd be
you read it right, but
Was that A1?
A1, you're required to have I'm going to say 25. I know it's not 25, but it's something like you're required to have a 25-foot setback. you're only allowed to occupy 40% of this area. So you could have a garage, you could have a big, you could have your house up here, and you could have a garage like that. I mean, right today,
Sure,
this is what
in
you could
ag,
do.
it makes sense, I get it.
If you built a garage down here, you can only occupy, again, 40% of this area, so you have to move your garage. It forces, the bigger garage you get, the further you have to get away from your back property line. So when it says 40% of your rear yard, that's only the required setback. It's not out your back door all the way to your back property line. It's just that very back end of your house.
Is that something we should reconsider?
No, that's very standard. That's every community you go to, it's 40% of the rear yard. It's a universal zoning standard. I'd hate to monkey with it. I think you create a lot of non-conforming.
Like you said, it's only to the setback, right?
Yeah, it's only to the setback.
Definition of your rear yard is the setback area. It's
Correct.
not really what you think
It's not
of
your
as
really
backyard.
your rear yard. So yeah, it's only your setback
Not
area.
not what you traditionally would think of as backyard.
Not like
It's
the
the
edge of
setback
your house.
area.
It's
Yeah, it's just when I say setbacks and rear yard, that's your build-to line for your house.
Oh.
And then you can put accessory structures like sheds and pools and garages into that area as long as you're not occupying more than 40%. And normally 3 to 4 feet gets you legal in most traditional neighborhoods, but if some bigger garages, they can get about 8 feet away from that back property line to make it work. So
Dave, I'm curious on B7, it says the height of accessory buildings shall not exceed the maximum height limits set for permitted uses in the district. Out of curiosity, does that allow you to have a single-story home and a two-story garage?
it allows you to have a 35-foot tall garage.
Up to 35 foot tall?
35, it's either 35 or 36.
Which essentially is more than 2 stories. Okay.
2.5 stories,
2.5, yeah.
Irrespective of your house size.
regardless of your house side, yeah.
Okay.
That's code today for. And again, we're talking about garages, and again, with our new zoning code, we're going to see with the aging population, we're going to see more and more parents moving in with children. I think you're going to see a push for more and more granny flats, mother-in-law quarters, whatever you want to call them. And you go out to the coasts, that little studio apartment above a garage is very, very popular. So again, we're regulating something here that could put that trend. I think we're going to see in the next 5 years. We might have to address that as well. Again, this is just responding to the council's decision to do something on it, and I'd like to get it off my desk and get the commission to get a recommendation to you, but I don't want to, if this is dead on arrival, I'd rather hear comments now so I can make those changes before I take it to P&Z.
Well, this makes it better,
Yes.
right? So
This does not prevent a big garage from being built in somebody's backyard, though. If you've got the setbacks and you want to design it, you can still build a big garage. But it does cap the traditional lots at 900 square feet.
And I think it makes the larger garages that go in a little more neighborly
It could, yeah.
looking.
Yeah.
If there's, I don't know how much ag property we still have within the city limits that's actually used, that's in the middle of a neighborhood.
Every old farmhouse out there is A1. We'll say it like that.
Is there no way to just go through and rezone all that?
The map here, we're hoping to have it P&Z next.
It's not
we're
being
actually- we're
used
gonna
as
have
ag?
We're going to have the new zoning districts at P&Z next week, and that'll be followed by a map hopefully this month, and most of those properties will be corrected. Not all of them, but most of them will be corrected. I think we're creating like an ag estate.
Because I think that was the issue, is that we had this ag
Well, the
property
ag truly becomes ag, but then we're still creating districts that allow, I think it's like, I'm going to call it residential estate. I forget the exact name of it. But if you have over 10 acres, and there's a lot of 10-acre parcels out there, maybe it's 8 acres, but it's like a residential estate that's those really large lots. There's a district created for those. To get away from calling them ag, we're going to call them what they are. They're residential, but they're big.
You have a special
Yeah, there'll be a residential zone.
residential zone for the large lots.
Instead of calling them ag, which they're
Exactly,
clearly not.
because that's not technically true. They're not being used as
Correct, but it's still going to allow for the big lots.
big lots and big garages.
Well, you wanted feedback. I think it's better, so I would support it. I wish we would do more, but I think, I don't know
My,
where
my,
everybody else is with that.
yeah, my feedback is that I'm not in favor of changing, and the only thing I would like to see is of what you changed, would be that it needs to look like the home, so it can't be a big steel building or something behind a ranch house or something. But I'm not in favor of limiting the size as long as it's done within the setbacks that are in place. I kind of agree with what the people that came in 10 years ago that, my property, I should be able to build what I want on my property.
Yeah.
And there's 5 houses down from me maybe. They've got a massive garage in their backyard. Doesn't bother me. I rarely notice it unless I'm, when I'm driving by, I don't notice this massive garage.
Well, my goal is to take something to the commission in August, and then follow up to council late August, early September, and I don't want to sit on my desk for another 6 months, so it's taken long enough to get it to you guys today, so.
Okay.
Well, I'll look at the comment, I'll listen again, I'll try to get the comments addressed as best I can, and we'll see what commission says, and they'll bring you something. It might be a little different than this, but I'm not hearing overwhelming no on it either, though.
Does anybody else want to chime in just to give? Well, I think we cancel each other out, so maybe a couple other people could give you some. Are you for it, against it, more or less?
I would lean towards Renee.
Me too.
Well-
It's better, I agree.
Well, we'll go through the public hearing process, and then you can decide what you want to, we'll be inviting a few people that did come in and speak on it 6 months ago. We'll let them know this is happening, and it doesn't change their situation at all, but it does,
Right.
they may have an opinion about future projects, so. Okay?
Okay.
All right, Kesha will do the next item on the agenda then.
Good afternoon.
Hey, Kesha.
Just for fun, I like to take it and show everybody what you got.
Take it to the grocery store, take it to the hardware store.
So what we did is I kind of gave you a recap. I'm going to briefly walk through that again. Beginning of June, I gave you a recap. I'm going to walk through that again. Beginning of May, with the city showcase, we kicked off public input for design. And what we did is we as staff worked with the consultants, a design firm from Des Moines, and then also the Iowa Big students to come up with 4 designs. And so what we did is, up on the screen, is we talked through option A is this false arch bridge that provides you kind of this truss type, if you can see the little scroller down the bottom right of the screen, or bottom left of the screen, that's a truss structure bridge with a false arch. And then on all the boards, and I have the boards here as well, that provides kind of that arch, that classic arch look, even though it's not structurally necessary with that, but the structure part is the truss part of the bridge. Option B was an A-frame bridge. Again, the structure comes from underneath. The A-frame has varying elements that range from closer together, they get further apart, and then closer together from west to east. That was known as the A-frame bridge. Option C was a skewed arch, and what this is you have the trail bridge through, and that's the blue elements here with just vertical elements outside of that. As you can see, there's a trail view in the center, top center. And then the skew part is the arch that would come down and provide that pedestrian access to 7th Avenue. Ideally, all of these would have that pedestrian access down to 7th Avenue to connect our major vehicular thoroughfare with our major trail thoroughfare. This is the only one that actually has it specifically built into the design of the pedestrian bridge. And then lastly, we had the concept from Iowa Big, which is a student-driven project. And so a lot of people thought that this was going to be a solid tubular steel culvert type thing just above the ground. And actually the students' intent is they had provided a presentation to the council in the spring of 2017 regarding, it's meant to be a lattice type, meant to have airflow through it. But the design with this, in the bottom right-hand corner, you can see the lights and the coil type design with the lights that they were trying to achieve with this. And so in your June 15th packet, I had presented you with the online voting and in-person voting. I mean, it doesn't look like a lot. I mean, it's a significant amount of dots on that paper. That's not to say that people couldn't vote twice. That's not to say that this couldn't be a popularity contest. If somebody just says, vote for only this one, just do it because I say. So, take that with a grain of salt. These are not statistically valid surveys, depending on how many digital online sources you have. You could have voted multiple times for the same one. But option A, so that false arch bridge, that truss in the false arch, got 573 votes online and board in-person voting, which is about 37% of the vote. Option B was that A-frame bridge, was 256, which is about 16% of the votes. I'll walk through them. Option C was that skewed arch bridge. That was 287, so that was about 19%. And option B was 411 votes, which was about 26%. So your top two are going to be your option A, which was that false arch, that standard truss bridge that's pretty synonymous with trail development. It's a pretty common bridge. And then option D was, again, the second most voted on, and that was the student-driven bridge. And then I also sent cost estimates. Let's see here. Run through these. And so the cost estimates I provided, that's a little tough to see, in the packet. And so it talks about...
I think you had a summary page, didn't you?
Yeah, all four
At
were
the
on
end?
one.
Yeah, at the end. So... Did you zoom that in? Oh, I'm like, I did not touch that thing. So, again, it gets into details with what's all involved. Zoom out here a little bit. Yeah. Ooh, it's going to be tricky. Okay. So, option 1 was that false arch. And so that one, what we had is when we requested funds for this, our cost estimates were at that $1.5 million for each bridge. So our total request from the MPO for the federal funds were $3 million. And so the cost estimates for the bridge over Indian Creek, we haven't really talked about that. I mean, we could talk about that if you want to. That one is utilizing the existing girders, taking off any toxic lead paint from them, kind of stripping them down to bare bones, and then reusing some of that older bridge. That's the 1918 bridge that we're trying to save a little bit more of, just because it's got a little bit more historical significance to that. And so that cost estimate is on that 1.5. And so what that leaves us for the bridge over Marion Boulevard is again around that 1.5 marker. And so since these are conceptual only, we have the structural engineer involved in this process to provide cost estimates, but not getting into full detail of lighting, all the materials, all the width, all the decking materials. It's a little varied from cost estimate. So option A is that false arch bridge with that truss structure was anywhere from $1 million on the lower end to more conservative, cost estimate or cautious cost estimate was that 1.3. So that one meets within that budgeted range already. Option 2 was the A-frame bridge. That was 1.9 to 2.3. We all couldn't get 4 unique designs and have them all be the same exact one. So if that, from staff size, if it was over, depending on how much it was over, is that something, if it was extremely popular in the vote, if council said absolutely yes, then, then there's the option for additional grants that we could try for, so hopefully only slowing down the trail process minimally. Option 3 was that skewed arch, that 1.7 to 2.1, again, over. And then option 4 has a couple different variations of how it could be built. If internally, inside the tube, it's more of a truss structure. So from the trail user, you lose a little bit of what the intent was for that bridge, but structurally, it's able to be built. And so that, again, was getting back to that truss structure, so that's kind of square box inside the cylindrical tube, was, again, that 1 million to 1.4. So that option would be within cost estimates. And then option 4A is a different design on that same bridge. So it's not a truss type structure that goes through the cylinder, but it's more of a substructure that the cylinder can just kind of be on top of the bridge per se. It's a costlier option. As you can see, it goes from 1.6 to 2.4 depending on what materials that tube is made out of, again, what lighting, what decking, and how big the footings and substructure needs to be. So there's a range in every option. What we have is 1.5 budgeted for this. What we're looking for from council is you have the public vote. Option A was if you're going by complete popularity. Option A was the winner, is within cost estimates. If the council says, no, I absolutely love this option, that is, that's a preference for the council. If you don't like any of them, or if there's elements of some that you do like, that's something we'd almost recommend some direction with that, but then have some sort of additional input. So discuss.
Okay. You ready for discussion?
Sure.
Okay. Speaking for myself, and I've shared this with the staff, I'm not wowed by any of these designs. Wowed by any of them. I was expecting something more that has a wow factor coming into our city, being the entryway, and I think we gave the public voted, and so you have, or voted on their favorites or whatever. So we do have input, but it's input on the 4 choices that were given. That doesn't mean that if there was another choice that was given that wouldn't be the favorite. It's just these are the 4 that were presented, and so these are the things that what people voted on when they were asked to vote. Which of these 4 do you like? I'd be in favor of taking some more time, and I didn't ask you this question before, but why wasn't there an artist involved? Like, why didn't we engage an artist or artists to help come up with a design? I think this is something that really deserves to be a really unique feature, and I know that. And the hard part is you want to make it unique from the street level and from the bridge level. The experience of bikers going through, and I get that, and that's important to keep in mind too. So that, but I think about it a lot from the street level, and I drive through there every day, and I was trying to imagine any of those 4 options up there, and I just think, I don't know, none of them do anything for me. None of them say I'm entering a really special city, or this is a cool place, or whatever it is. I don't know. That's how I feel. I'd be in favor of doing a little more work on coming up with a different design or another option, and maybe doing more public input on that if you feel like that's.
that's the direction of council, we can
Well,
do that.
that's just my
That's
input.
his
We haven't heard
opinion.
from anybody else.
We did have a bridge architect firm, Substance Architecture, they came up with an option one originally that was more than double the bridge, and so we as staff kind of tamed it back to kind of the option one that was distributed for voting. If if council wants to direct us to go back and look at something that has that wow factor, is it the question of, are we going to exceed existing budget? Do we apply for additional grants? Do we go back to the bridge architect and revise our agreement with them for additional renderings? Do we want members of the council there?
I think there's potential for getting grant money.
Yeah, my opinion is, I am not good at designing something, but if you lay choices in front of me, I'll pick one. And I did. I was with the majority in this. Some of the other ones I did not like for specific reasons. I did not like D because I think it was open in the middle. And my concern is from a safety standpoint of, too many past stories you've heard about from bridges, from other areas. So, A is a little simpler, but of the four that were there, I concur with the majority that was there. And again, if you want to go after more money, that's fine. But again, these votes were not made with those dollars known by anybody at that point in time. So that might have impacted or skewed some of the voting as well. Obviously, I didn't know that, but I was just going from an appearance standpoint.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, I remember the presentation Iowa Big gave, and it just seemed really exciting, their project. And so I am really for option D because it's just a little bit more exciting, and I think it's really cool that, we could say that the Iowa Big designed it, so I'm for D. But A is safe. So then my second choice would be A. But I would also be looking for something, if we need more time and more money, maybe, looking into that too.
I'd probably stand alone, which isn't uncommon. I'd like to have us enhance the bridge that's there. Tell engineering design Alberta Road to fit that intersection somehow. You guys are smart. You can do that. I'd like to put a steam engine up there and clean that bridge up and paint it and keep it. It's part of our history. This town wouldn't be here had it not been for the railroad. We would not have an uptown to worry about enhancing and what have you. And the bridge that's there held trains all these years. I can't believe it's in diminished shape that isn't repairable. And I can't believe that engineering is not smart enough to figure out how to do that intersection. They figure all the rest of them out with that center pier in there, and that's my opinion.
Randy, or comments? No? Will?
We talked before, my opinion. I was not a big fan of any of them to begin with. I voted for one of them because there was, again, the four that were in front of us. So I would probably agree with the mayor that maybe we look for some other design, because I was not wowed by any of them either.
So how much does it cost to go out and how much have we spent on this process already? Ish. Don't break it down. Just, is it 0? Is it 10,000? Is it 50,000?
I'm trying to think of substance, sub-consultant fees, if it was in the 20 to 30,000.
Okay.
And that was not just, hey, do this bridge and make a pretty concept of it. It was 3 or 4 meetings with staff just to get a feel for, and then some of you, maybe all of you, received feedback as far as sending out, what does Marion mean to you? Where do you see Marion growing? What does the community So there were a number of stakeholders in the community that we sent those out to as far as, so that they could get a feel for, is it a railroad theme? Do we definitely want a railroad theme? And I mean, that is the continued question, because even in the response, we have some people that said, absolutely keep the railroad theme. And people said, the railroad is gone, move on. I mean, so it was just as the council is diverse, I mean, the responses were diverse as well. So Substance took those, they kind of came back with some designs, and some of them staff was like,
But 30,000 maybe, okay.
And that's just the design. It just depends on what we'd be looking at for bridge costs as well. Do we find that unicorn bridge? And it is amazingly expensive. So,
But that's not necessarily going to happen.
Right.
I mean, you could just have something that's a little more creative that's within the budget. I just don't, I look at the designs and I think, well, they're not creative. They're...
Can I just finish my vote real quick? Because I just wanted to find out what's been spent. So I've liked A all along. I think it's classy, it's traditional. It happens to be the cheapest one. It happens to be the one that was most popular. But I was in Portland recently, and they had a bridge. I'm like, hey, that looks like the bridge, it's familiar. So I'm sure there could be maybe better bridges out there. I personally like that one. So for me, going back to the drawing board isn't necessary. Could I vote on future bridges put in front of us? Of course. But I'm happy with A for a variety of reasons.
I almost wish we had this discussion before we had the public input, but
What if you take A and you get an artist or some artists to spruce it up?
You got some more dollars to play with.
Well, my only comment on A was I liked it, and I wonder if we could, instead of doing the red, do it our branding color or colors. That was my only change, but maybe something could be done, some
Artistically with
overlay.
A?
I don't personally care. I think it's fine as is, but there's still money in the budget, and it would maybe appease others.
Ooh, get ready for the scrolling.
Arm getting tired. Nick.
What's that?
You raising your hand over there, Mike?
Oh, you have a question or a comment, sorry.
So one thing I do want to point out between option A and the other options is option A is only, 10 foot wide? And the others are 14 or 16 foot wide. A is wood plank. We can't even put a hard surface on it. And because of the weight and the design of option A, it's basically your plain bridge, and so the arch is just there for aesthetics. It's not actually any kind of support, so that we can change it to whatever color, whatever shape you want. But that component of it, just so you think of that you're walking over a wood plank bridge. So the way that I kind of think of it is on the trail that takes you down to Ely when you go over by the Shack Tavern. It's kind of that bridge style, except you're adding an arch to it, except that's actually hard surface. Versus this is a plank that you would be going over, and it's only the minimum 10 or 11 foot wide. So it's just something, you're not comparing apples to oranges. And again, when we do these pictures, it's hard to tell the difference that one's only 10 foot versus one's 14.
Well, you're giving us more information right there than we had before about materials being used and widths. We're assuming dimensions are similar, and what you can do with each bridge is similar, that we're looking at a design difference.
Right.
Not construction difference.
Not just aesthetic,
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about more issues here than just what it looks like. It's how you can use it.
Right, and so basically our original option A was the one that staff and the committee really liked, but that option A was too expensive. So we didn't feel we wanted to throw an option out there that was 4 times our budget. And so we purposely scaled A back so that it was within budget, but then there's limitations to it, and I don't know that you guys knew that. So I wanted to make sure that you guys knew of those limitations before you start going down that corridor.
Did not.
Thanks for mentioning that, Mike, because it is important,
I'd be curious to see the original option A. She just laughed out.
Just so you know, the original option A actually had an overlook on top of the bridge.
And how much is original option A before we get all excited?
I'm not getting
It's like 3 mil?
Yes. No.
4 times, you said?
I'm sure Kesha has the number and can pull it up.
Original option A with the overlook. With the overlook was a conservative estimate at 3.8, high estimate of 4.2. So almost triple the budget, but hold your shirts on.
Don't fall in love, anybody.
Enough for this guy.
Wow.
This was
That's
original
pretty.
option A. What this does is for ADA accessibility, we couldn't have stairs coming up from both sides, and so there's a ramp coming up from one side. You'd have trail down here, overlook, and so we had a number of meetings with staff on this because we really were just drawn to this. This is one that they showed us, and we said, yes, that one. And then we're like, okay, how do we take away this? Okay, what if we take away this? And it was still more than double. And so trail experience would be, this would be heading west. Well, if you put the pedestrian access on the east side of the bridge, so you'd be heading west, and that's what.
And
you'd
that's
see.
14 feet, Kesha? Does that also, is that 14 feet
The
wide?
16 foot
16,
wide.
okay.
So originally, and we can narrow it down to 14 and still be within the federal requirements. When we get into 12 and 10, that's where we get into design exceptions, which aren't uncommon, but ideally, just because you have the guardrails there, you want the shy space for bike handlebars. And you know, if we anticipate this to be a well-used trail, which we do, this is going to be a nice connection into Cedar Rapids, both going to the south and going to the west.
Why is the overlook important? I mean, like.
It was that wow factor.
Yeah.
It was that reaching higher, literally.
So
but
you would actually have people be able to stand on top of the bridge
yeah,
and look down on the street?
And see Marion. And the consultants at the time had drone images from level of current bridge or level of where the bridge would be. You know, you get a decent view because you're up higher than you are ever down on the street. And then they had a drone view of that. And I mean, that 10, 15 feet does make a substantial difference in your viewing space of Marion. So it was just that option. I'm sure that anybody who the first time you stood on top of the high building and Phillips Diamond Shop building, you know, you see a view that you're not used to.
Or Deb's new truck.
Mm-hmm.
Those that are brave enough, yes.
Would this be 1 foot higher than the high building?
Not quite sure. Haven't checked the elevations on that. But, you know, if
Kesha, here's what, for me personally, the biggest driving factor is going to be cost.
Yeah.
I'm not going to want to go. So if we get more grant money and we have more money to put it, great. But we have a lot of big projects going on, and I don't want to spend millions for aesthetics. You know, if whatever the public decides, I'm one person, so I kind of like going with the majority because that was more residents than me deciding. For me personally, the fiscal piece is going to drive it. So whatever everybody else likes the look of, if it's within budget, I'll support.
With that in mind, what would it cost to spruce up the current bridge, which is like 20-some foot wide,
I don't care.
and let you figure out how to handle Albernet Road and utilize it? You know, I mean, it's, my God, guys, it's going to cost a lot of money to tear it down. It's built. And what would that cost? Is that a fair thing to ask for? What would it cost to paint that up and clean that up? And
Well, if it accomplished what you want and then what these gentlemen want, because they wanted something maybe different, I mean, if we're going out and looking at new things,
at least you have a
why not?
comparable.
Right.
You know.
just note that the assumption that the bridge can be left as is and Albernet Road, there's no additional costs incurred with Albernet Road. You know, I'm sure engineering can design a road that is pushed further to the east, which means more property acquisitions.
I keep hearing that's why we have to change the bridge that's there because of Albernail Road coming in.
That
Yeah,
center
so
turn
I
lane.
thought we'd been through that discussion, that it would require, the current design is the one that requires the least property acquisitions and taking away of houses.
Yep.
Right? Is that not
Correct. We would
correct?
have to buy, right now, we're just buying properties on the west side of Second Street. If we shift this intersection further east, then we're taking away businesses. And if that's something we want to do, then we can do that, but,
And more houses?
and more houses. But that center pier is the problem. And
Put
that
in
turn
a
lane.
roundabout in there. You like those? You
The
go
tra-
around
the,
that thing.
the roundabout will not work at the intersection. It needs to be a traffic signal.
So it's really,
Put your
it's the
heads
center
together.
pier of that bridge that is
Yep.
in the way.
And we can't just take the center pier out. The bridge will not stand.
Yeah.
It needs to be able to support that. That's why that center pier is there.
Yeah. Well, I don't think anybody wants to, necessarily spend a ton more money, but I was saying it would be worth seeing if there's other options. I mean, there can't just be 4 designs for a potential bridge, or 2 of them within budget. I mean, we have 2 within budget, right? There's got to be other possible designs. I don't, that.
Well, again, I would echo the same comment as Renee, that from the standpoint of keeping this within budget is going to be one of the key aspects I would look for, because, again, there's a lot of other places we're going to want to spend money. So unless there's other grants available, I would be looking for us to stay
Which I think is
within that
possible.
$1.5 million budget.
And
So did you say that you took this concept and got down to A? Option
Just
A?
to let you know kind of how that conversation developed, when the committee was taking a look at this, taking the overlook out, which really was a big driver of cost, the original concept hadn't contemplated that you would need that huge ADA ramp, and so the original picture was curved and had the arches in it. So the question that was posed back to the design team was, can you take those essential elements, the things that people like about this bridge, which was that arch and was kind of that sweeping curve across the top, and design a bridge that would be something that could come together within budget. So if you look at the two, if you were looking at them from coming down the road, they are going to look fairly structurally similar because they have that arch design. But they did contract back all the way to doing a prefab bridge structure that basically comes in and assembles it, and then you can do whatever you want around it. To Mike's point, the arch on the other one is ornamental. The arch on this one was structural.
So can't the ornamental arch be made to look more like this structural arch?
But
I mean, that's just one idea.
It's a totally different look too. I mean, the other one's a box.
And that box would still be there. It's just what do you add to it to spruce it up. If you go with option A, that's basically what you're building is the box structure and then whatever accents you have on that to make it pretty. And that's where it limits both the length and the width of the bridge, because unless you redesign the whole thing, and by then you might as well build a new bridge. Because you're having to structurally design it. This is more of a prefab bridge, so if you drive out to the one that we just set, it doesn't have the top structure, but it has the sides and the bottom that we just set for Grantwood Trail that came in the 3 sections. That's basically what this is. It's a pre-engineered bridge that shows up on a semi and they assemble it. And then this is just adding the arch as that component to it, is all that is doing. So as staff, when we look at it and we want to have that gateway as you're entering Marion and that reach higher, we're not real excited when we see this bridge. Or is reaching higher.
is part of it the truss that goes out, if we're trying to create this over 200-foot clear span bridge, do we go back from taking out all of the columns, because right now there's one in the center, which we said needs to go away, and then there's one right outside the drive lanes. Even as much as putting structural supports right outside the sidewalk, so you still have a better expanse, nothing in between the sidewalks. Is it something as simple as adding supporting columns there? Do you shorten the truss? Do you beef up the arch so the arch appears to have more substance to the bridge. Maybe it's still a false arch, maybe it's still not a supporting structure. Is option A or versions of option A, are you comfortable with an arch going forward? Is everybody said, no, that's every other trail bridge that we've seen built in Iowa, we want something completely different than an arch? We can have variations of this.
It's hard to say because I don't feel like, personally, again, like we've seen enough options, and I don't feel like it's, when it's done, I want to be able to say, look what we did. This was worth everything we went through, and we've really given the community something awesome for the next whatever generations.
We should say that about everything we sit up here and approve.
Exactly.
Right?
Well, exactly. Everything we do should raise the bar that much more, and it should be something we're all just really excited about and proud of. Yeah. It's just hard to say when you haven't seen. You've only seen four options. You know, it can't just be four designs.
No, it's unlimited designs out there.
Within budget, you know.
Right. It's just the question of how far you want to go with the design. Can lighting, like I said.
And I don't want to diminish all the work you've put into it. I really don't. I mean, I don't. If that is coming out, I apologize. I don't want to in any way to belittle or diminish the time and work that staff's put into it. So that's not at all the issue here. And appreciate all the time you put into it. We're just trying to do it right.
Right.
I like the arch look.
Mm.
I'm just not a fan of the.
Maybe it's the colors.
box.
Is it the colors?
I don't like the squareness of the. I don't know.
Yeah. No, it just doesn't excite me. But again, I'm one person, so. But I think there's a strong possibility we could get grant dollars based on our discussion.
Mm-hmm.
So.
What was it said if you took away for the original option A, if you take away the overlook, having people actually go up there, is there a cost for that?
The cost for that was $3 million to $3.4.
That was without the overlay.
That was without,
overlook.
right.
Okay.
The overlook took away $800,000. I mean, took away $800,000 from the project, but it's still, the low cost estimate is still double the budget for the bridge.
So how do you get that down to 1.5?
You raise more money. I don't think you can.
Structurally deficient.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't put more than one biker on it at a
Get
time.
one side.
Yeah.
So, just, do we want to go back to the drawing board? Do we want to amend our contract with Shoemaker and essentially Substance Architecture for revised options? Do we want to go option A-ish? Do we want members of the council to have input going forward? That saying option A leaning towards an arch design because that's what we're after, but not this arch design. We could have members of the council on a committee going forward to work through design, bring it back to council, obviously, before anything's finalized. We could hire Substance to come up with 4 completely different.
Weren't they having problems coming up with more than these 4? Is there, just throwing this out there, is there another bridge design firm that?
You start all over.
Well, they originally did come out with 4 different ones, and the only one out of those 4 that staff even liked was A. So we threw all those out. They were building more of
The
a
original
gateway.
A?
The overlook.
Yeah.
So they originally came to us with 4 designs. We threw 3 of the 4 out and said no way. And so then they came.
Cost or look?
Look, they were more gateway than bridge. And then they came back with these 3 to supplement.
What does that mean? Wait, explain that. What does more gateway than bridge mean?
So it's basically more like a fence with an opening. So more like viaduct, I don't know if Kesha has those or not, but
No.
I'm not
but they were ones that, as staff, we were looking at them, and they weren't what we were looking for. They were very, I'm not a architect here, but very, I can't say that. Thick and just big structures. I mean, there was just like, no, that's not Marion.
I mean, I'll just throw out the idea to follow up on your question is where do we go from here? And it kind of seemed overall, listening to everybody's comments, there's a little more support for A, but maybe with some additional artistic variation.
So this is one of the
starting
original
from
ones.
scratch. I mean,
And it lends itself to more lighting, more signage, which planning department is like, no,
That's
no
terrible.
What is
lighting,
that?
no signage.
what in the heck is it?
You know, this was one of this feud. This one doesn't have the arch down, but it was more of a overlook, cantilevered. Again, getting into more
That's terrible.
signage.
I'm sorry. That looks like the bottom of your newscast screen with the, stocks and whatnot running
This
across
one
it.
was,
Ticker
again,
tape.
a little bit
Whatever
like
that
a
is.
What
huge
is wrong with
arch,
that?
but had trail going
Because
through.
people are
I mean,
gonna
it's
crash 'cause they're
pretty
gonna be
simple
reading it.
bridge, and then some arch elements. Because what they were trying to do is they were trying to create the trail cross through, but then understanding a perpendicular. You know, the trail is not directly perpendicular to the road, and so they were trying to create that element that was perpendicular to the road. Again, getting back to substructure of an arch and the through bridge. This one was interesting. Just kind of create. I mean, again, what you saw in the final had a lot more vertical elements. These were, or area elements to it. These were kind of heavy. Again, getting back to the signage. What Mike's trying to say is the gateway. Our ability to reach out to people, again, from the vehicular traffic. And so that initial meeting was pretty short, of no, okay, we like the arch. Again, this
those
was back
really
in
ugly
January,
things
so
and they
this
have
is, a lot has changed, a lot of conversations have been had since then. So,
Come on, Mayor, what are we doing? She's waiting for some direction.
I just want to know what to put on Thursday, if it's directing staff to go with, seeking additional design services for all new bridges, for arch-themed bridges.
I wouldn't mind seeing a design that looks old, because all of them look modern. And if you could, I don't know, something that looks like it's been there forever.
I think A to me, looks like an old railroad bridge.
Kind of traditional.
Yeah.
If they were, if,
It's safe.
Yeah.
It's the safe
I mean, would it
option.
take a lot of work on their part if you asked them, if you were to tweak if you were to tweak it to make it more artistic, more, more
No ticker
creative?
tape.
How would you do that, or what might you do? I mean, that would take a lot of.
And that's
work to
something we
just-
could work, that's something we could work with the design engineer to find other, if it's an arch-themed bridge, again, like I said, you can,
I think we like the sleekness of this, So, I mean, can they do something with that arch design that's a little more sleek like this?
again, the truss structure is going to be the savings potential of the arch bridge.
Yeah.
We can see,
But what does everybody think now that it's wood plank? I mean, is that something that,
and that's something we can go back to them, like I said, if we have the columns right outside the sidewalks, if we shorten that truss bridge, beef up the arch components to it, but shortening that truss, can we get a wider bridge? Could we get concrete decking instead of that wood plank? That's questions we could explore.
Well, how thick is
It's
the
all
wood plank?
worthwhile.
I mean, when you say wood plank, these are what, 3 by, or, I mean, how big are these planks?
I've never replaced them, Mike.
Okay. I have no idea. I mean, because you go across, you think of a lot of bridges, you're going across wood planks all the time, so.
Couple examples, if of the bridges that we have on the trail system currently that have the wood plank deck. Our newest one would be the one that crosses Donley, or over at Donley and crosses Dry Creek. Those planks are going to range between a width of 12 inches, and traditionally I think those are about 6 inches thick.
Okay.
Is what they are, 4 to 6 on those. Now, the one that crosses Indian Creek down in the Krumholtz property, Legion Park, if you will, that's a different type of plank construction. Again, I think those are somewhere around a 8-inch plank, and they're not nearly as thick as like the ones over at Donley. So if you ride your bike across the one in the Krumholtz property, it's like riding across a railroad.
Yeah.
To give an example, railroad tracks. If you go ride the one over in Donley or one across some of the other ones in Legion Park going over towards the cemetery, much smoother ride on those bridges. So there are differences in the design of the plank. I'm not exactly sure which this will be at this time. One thing that we always look at, we've been maintaining these wood plank, bridges for several years. So they do, we do have a lot of history with those, and they do hold up very well for the most part. We do run snow removal equipment across the majority of them, and they have overall held up well over the years. Those are going across creek areas. This would be going across a major arterial through Marion. So the one reservation that I do have a little bit with the design is the width of the bridge.
Yeah.
That's somewhat restrictive in the wintertime and where we're carrying snow, those type of things, Not so much of an issue with the ones on the other park trails because we just unloaded off, into grass areas there would. So that's just the one concern that I've had, overall with that design. Not that we can go with that, but those are, just a couple things to also consider.
Okay.
I think it's that width difference that kind of surprised a few of us up here too, when you said it's 10 foot wide and the other ones were 14. That you look at it when you drive under it and all of that as well. I think that gives you a different appearance as well. It seems to be certainly smaller. Is it going to look smaller, for that big of a bridge? So initially going through it, that 10-foot width seemed a little narrow.
Okay. I don't know. Is that? So I haven't reached a decision.
That one.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line for me is, I don't want to just, if we're going to do something, if we're going to go to the expense and trouble of doing this, I don't want to just have something that's better than what was there. I mean, to me, that's not reaching higher. If we can say, well, it's better than what was there, I want to look at it and say, that's awesome, And I don't think it necessarily has to be with a lot of additional costs. I think it's with additional creativity on what you do with those arches or whatever. Like, more being a little more artistic. But what do I know? I'm not the expert, but that's just those are the thoughts. And
I would make a recommendation. We take that back and we challenge them to come up with something. Take these minutes, take the audios. All of our objectives are out there. let them take it to the drawing board and come up with something in between and see what materializes. We should be challenging them to come up with something that gives us the wow. We're not, you can change all the materials and, this construction of it. Let them design it and come back with something that gets a little closer.
Towards an option A, towards an arch.
Yes.
Yeah,
Fine with that.
but wider.
Okay. Well, yes, wider,
Wowier.
wowier.
Not
Definitely.
just a box.
Definitely. We'll start with the design engineer to look at different options structurally, shortening that, if there's any give that can be had in components of this. Do we want to bring this back to council for full discussion again, or do we want to have a few members of council on a working committee with staff?
I think that'd be good.
I
We
think
need
that's
the
good.
mayor on it.
I favor the latter.
Okay, so.
I'll volunteer.
Okay, mayor's on it.
Anyone else?
Okay,
You should be on it.
Why? I was
don't
fine
know.
with the A.
That's what I'm saying.
All I care about mostly is
Those
the
that are
money,
fine
so
with A aren't on this
stick in the
committee.
budget and I'm okay. It should be you two.
Fine.
And maybe Paul, because he wants something kind of different too.
okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Tricia.
Do we have more?
I'm glad
Mark?
that P and Z got 15 minutes, because it was necessary. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, the only item we had starred under administration was to have further discussions with the council on the early retirement option program for 2018. We have taken a look at it again, and HR is still recommending that we proceed with the program under the parameters that we had suggested to council before. Unfortunately, I was not here for the conversation the last time around. Just wanted to check and see and make sure that council members had a chance to have any concerns they had addressed and be able to ask questions about the program. I did go back and work with Jen to take one more final look at the numbers just to make sure that everything was where we thought it would be, and everything that we've looked at subsequent to talking with the city council members actually makes the program look better. So, see if there are any other questions.
Comments or input on that?
Lon, I had a question on the payout for longevity. I understand that comes out of the benefits fund, is that correct?
The employee benefits fund, yes.
Yeah, and could you tell me what funds that fund? I
It,
understand we were concerned about possibly building those reserves up again, so there would be a timeline before this would be offered again, but I couldn't get an answer as to what funds that.
Primarily what's been funding it in recent years has been transfers at the end of the fiscal year. If you recall, at the end of the fiscal year, we did a transfer for unused unemployment funds, and I think there's a couple of other, I'd have to look and see what the other primary one is that we transfer into that at the end of the year. We aren't an organization, for example, that on unemployment where we just preemptively pay into the fund. We levy a certain amount that we assess per employee and kind of roll the dice on whether we'll have any unemployment claims during the year. If we don't have an unemployment claim, then at the end of the fiscal year, we bring back a resolution and transfer those unused funds into this. I would anticipate over the next couple of years that we are going to need to bolster this fund somewhat, but I believe we can use the employee benefits levy to help with doing that. So it'd be a dedicated revenue source for it.
One of the things that drives workman's comp premiums are payroll dollars. Does that impact that at all? I didn't see that in the scheduling at all. Typically, if you would have a lower salary, you have lower premiums for the workman's comp. Is that the case here, or do we self-fund our work comp?
No, our workers' comp is based off of payroll dollars, so as there is a decrease in that, you'd see a decrease in the amount as well. That was when I said I had gone back and talked with Jen. Those are the things that we really took a look at, because the council had seen a lot of the raw numbers, but to her credit, she was using kind of the old way that the numbers had been calculated to see what the savings looked like. When we reran the numbers, we added in what you wouldn't pay on FICA on the difference in the wages, what you wouldn't pay in IPERS on the increase in the wages. We didn't get down to the level of looking at workers' comp or, for example, the difference in long-term disability premiums are driven by age as well. We didn't get into those because those were more the hundreds of dollars per year rather than the thousands of dollars per year. But everything that you do on that actually just makes the numbers look better.
Any other questions for Lon, or does that answer your question?
Nope, I had one more, but
Yeah, go ahead.
I can't think of it. And we had talked about that was actually calculating at a 3% increase per year, just as an assumption. And, health insurance claims, I'd like to have clarification on this. Are our premiums a derivative of the claims in the previous year? And if so, do we potentially stand an issue with higher premiums because of claims that could be a derivative of people still on our health insurance plan as they age?
Our claims are related to health insurance premiums for the prior year, but because we're self-funded, we have a $30,000 stop loss. So after you exceed the $30,000 stop loss, where it impacts us is in the premiums for the stop loss portion of what we pay for. Essentially, the city pays the first $30,000 of all claims, and we put money into that fund based on every policy that we have. So the risk that you have is, say you have a bad year and you have a lot of claims that exceed that $30,000, you would see potentially a bump in the stop loss, but it's not like it is if you were paying pure premium and you were just going dollar for dollar based off of claims. It's blunted somewhat. And because we're self-funded, we have the option from year to year to be able to smooth those out. If we have, for example, a low claims year and have dollars in that reserve fund, we can actually choose to levy less for premiums in the following year.
Okay. And the timeline on this again was for 4 years?
That would be the benefit period, yeah.
4 years, okay. That's all I had. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Other comments, questions, input on that? Anything else on the agenda? Okay, the meeting's adjourned. Thank you.